Okay, cool. So thank you for accepting this invitation, Lindsay. Well, you're very aware of the hackathon that we are running. Actually, you're one of our judges. So we're really happy to have you here. For the audience, just to have a brief introduction on Lindsay, and I'm gonna actually let Lindsay say a few words about herself. Um, Later on, Lindsay is a very sought out speaker. We have worked together on several blockchain projects, and she has been really committed in working towards transforming communities, working towards inclusion. She runs a couple of really important chapters on diversity, such as women of color in blockchain. She'll talk to you more about it. So, Lindsay, if you want to say a few words about yourself, that would be more than
Absolutely.
great.
So first and foremost, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to participate in the upcoming hackathon. I couldn't be more excited for just the amazing sort of depth and breadth of ideas and experience and backgrounds that this event is really going to bring to the surface. So thank you again for having me. A little bit about my background. I've got about 15 or 16 years now in the technology industry under my belt in varying uh, degrees of technical and very business strategic roles in organizations of all sizes, spanning from the DoD and military, very highly regulated government organizations, to very small venture-backed high growth companies. And I'm, you know, extremely passionate about the intersection of technology and society and how people are affected by the initiatives and products that are rolled out. So I've been definitely involved in, initiatives like Black Girls Who Code that focus on youth, um, really thinking through the best ways that we can engage diverse communities and women through representation, showing them faces and experiences that look like them, but also driving um, a more focused initiative of my own through Women of Color and Blockchain that focuses on fostering wider adoption of blockchain technology through directly investing in women of color, one of the highest growing demographic of entrepreneurs in the US. And we have some of the most inspiring grit and determination and backgrounds that I've ever been exposed to. So I really wanted to make sure that I played my part in helping that sort of community come to the blockchain industry with open and welcome arms. So um, definitely excited to dig in and meet more of the women from your community as well.
Right, thank you. And yes, it's no secret that Latin American women, it's still a very underrepresented community overall in the tech community. So this is a very almost personal effort that we're making to try to empower women through blockchain skills and make them more competitive on the tech community. So in that sense, I would like to ask you some very specific questions that I think our audience is going to appreciate because they're building, these solutions as we speak to try to reduce the gap on gender inequality. So first, what do you think are the major reasons that cause gender inequality on the work field?
Definitely biases that we all have as human beings that we come to the workplace with, right? And the attention that is being given to areas that don't necessarily affect lasting behavioral change over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my mentors affectionately called it food, flags, and fun. And all of those things around diversity can be great, but we need to focus on identifying our biases, again, because this is a very natural thing that we all come to our experiences with. But then how do we address those in a way that fosters an equitable and inclusive environment in the workplace is one. Also thinking about how we as leaders, if you're a people leader within your organization, really level that up and make sure that we're promoting and roping in talent that not only is fair and equitable, because that's what we want to achieve and how we treat our people, but also because it positions our companies to be much more competitive and much more comprehensive in how we approach problems.
Right. And, you mentioned something earlier, bias. It's a very big word. How do you think we can, because somebody mentioned this in a recent panel in India in the future of work. How do you think we can leverage bias towards reducing the gap on inequality? You have any, I don't know, ideas on top of your head? Is there any way we can make bias useful?
I believe there is, again, bringing a diverse perspective to the workplace. My biases might be completely different than your biases, and I think people automatically associate those with racial bias or gender bias, but it can also be a bias toward risk, or a bias against certain other factors that really play into the workforce. So I think there are ways that we can really build out a team that is extremely effective if we look at the whole, right? Not just the sum of its parts of our team, and we hire and build our teams for that, again, that comprehensive perspective. And two, make sure that as a team, we're always aware of how these biases come into effect, say around decisions that we make in the workplace, around things that make it into our policies and procedures in our company, and even our products that we go to market with, so that we can implement, processes along the way to spot those biases and mitigate them. For instance, in the software development lifecycle, right? If you know that you don't have any women on your team, right? This is a common challenge for a lot of companies, and it is just the reality that we're living with. Making sure that you leverage some of the many tools that are out there for keyword or offensive language toward certain groups or women, or have a QA do a cultural check as well as a quality or bug check when they're looking and parsing through the code and the information that you're thinking about going public with. So I definitely think that there is a way that we can use bias in our favor, but it has to start with first knowing what those biases are that we're operating with.
Right. And there's a phenomena to us is that we are an underrepresented community of underrepresented community. I mean, as women of color, Latin American women, we're even more, we tend to suffer more of bias than, in the overall, group of women. So it's like a double bias. So yes, that it's a very important thing, and to create awareness and consciousness, and bring diversity to it. Bias not necessarily has to be a bad thing. That's what I'm getting from you. It can actually be a very fertile, condition within a group, even to work on it, as long as you're conscious, aware of it, and use it to leverage it positively.
Absolutely. I think just like we say, technology at its core is not good or bad. It's the way it's used, right?
Yeah.
The same is true for bias, right? It's not good or bad inherently, because these are normal physiological phenomenon within us to protect us, right? To parse out trends. And it really is going to come down to being very self-aware, and being very judicious and critical as leaders within companies or as employees with each other on how to navigate these conversations. Because you hit something on the head where you have this compounding underrepresented category, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of times underrepresented minorities, no matter what category you fall under, tend to, you know, face imposter syndrome, or they fall into tunnels where they can become tokenized. There's even something, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called the queen bee syndrome. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
Yeah, where people think just because there's one woman in leadership that they've made it, and that's all there's room for, and they don't lift as they climb and pull other women up with them. And so these are really, really important challenges that we, as women and as, you know, African women or Latin women, all need to be aware of and, you know, address. Because yes, there is absolutely responsibility on company side and on leader side to get this right. But within a group, there's personal responsibility. There's responsibility to your community, to address these issues. And then also, you know, just operate accordingly and support each other, right? Because, you know, like I said, WCB, Women of Color, is inclusive of all women of color, Latinx, African American, Asian, Spanish, because I truly believe that we are stronger together as a collective. So really making sure you take advantage, and you guys will really get it here at the Blockchain Challenge Hackathon, right? Taking advantage of that community that you're exposed to, and know that you're around people and around mentors, and other technology professionals who know exactly where you're coming from.
Right. And in that sense, I wanted to ask you more focusing on blockchain. What are the opportunities you see on blockchain technology, on being a tool that can actually help close this gap? Like, can blockchain be used somehow to work and on leveraging the bias, or I don't know, you know, using blockchain to tackle these variables that cause bias? How do you see blockchain playing a very important part on this problem?
You know, there are features and benefits around blockchain that are inherently beautiful with addressing these specific challenges. Because when you look at some of the core functionality, really driving decisions or actions in an ecosystem through consensus, the self-sovereign identity movement, and really being able at a more granular level to manage your identity. So the confluence of all of these sort of capabilities allow use cases to be unlocked